Hey Pinstripers, how's it going? Today we're gonna discuss an issue of setting up a brand new brush. How to set it up properly, how to cut it. Because when you get a brand new brush straight from a shop delivered to you, it's not necessarily ready to paint, and that is one of the very common questions you've been asking for the last few weeks since we started that little pinstriping tutorial series. So today I got two brand new brushes delivered right out of the packaging. I've got my favorite Mac Blue Series 10 series, that's a 0, and I've got also by Mac I've got the Wizard Vortex scrolling brush size 0 as well. I got these two brushes because they are most commonly used brushes in pinstriping world, but the procedure would be more or less the same for sword liners, scrollers, or the quills, which is the lettering brushes, or any other brushes out there for pickup line, for outline, and whatever you can think of. It's more or less the same. I mean, brush is a brush at the end of the day. The main difference is going to be the sword liner and any other brush really, but I'm going to show you what I do, how I like to set it up, and what is my process when I get a brand new brush. Yeah, let's take it from there, see what happens. Alright, so to start the process, what we need obviously is a brand new brush of your choice, doesn't matter what that is. We'll need a white spirit, which I've put in my little container, or any other thinner of your choice, whatever you're using, whatever works for you. Mineral spirits, white spirit, specific thinners, whatever your paint recommended to use. I like to have some engine oil. I've got motorcycle engine oil because I ride bikes and I always got that oil laying around. Any other oil will do. You can get specific brush preserving oil, or even kitchen oil like olive oil. That would probably do, just to preserve the brush in between the cleanups. I like to include that in the process. Obviously paint and scalpel, brand new scalpel blade or razor blades, or very sharp Stanley blade. You know, you can take the actual blade from the knife, because I don't like to use scissors for cutting in the brush. That's if the brush needs cutting. Once we got these supplies, let's get to work. Rock and roll. So this is a brand new Mac 0 brush, 10 series. You can recognize it by the blue ferrule. It is one of my favorite pinstriping sword lining brushes. And as you can see, this one comes from a factory, it's completely dry. There is probably some kind of residue on it, which we're going to get rid of dunking it in white spirit. But first I want to show you how nice and fluffy it is. You will probably never see your brush this new again. I mean, this fluffy. It's quite thick. Obviously once we wet it and dip it in paint, it will become a bit more of what you used to. You will be stuck together and all this. And what we're looking to do is get rid of very tip of it, because some of the hair on the end, it will be sticking out too much. But before we cut it down, or before we start doing anything with it, you know, that is involves the razor blade, I want to take it for a spin just as it is. Obviously I will clean it, and I always like to paint with that brush on a practice board, probably 2 or 3 cycles, depends how I feel. And after that you'll be able to tell whether your brush needs cutting or not, because some brushes, some manufacturers, they pre-cut their brushes, or they come already from the package straight ready to use, so you don't need to do anything with it. I found out that probably 8 times out of 10 you need to cut the tip a little bit, because there are a few hairs always sticking out, but that's not a big deal. I know some of you are kind of afraid of cutting it too much, but I will try to explain what we're looking for today when it comes to a sword liner brush. Yeah, we're gonna discuss this brush later on. Yeah, but let's focus on this one. Yeah, so as I said, brand new brush, straight from a package. You know, I haven't done anything with it whatsoever. So first thing I want to do is clean it thoroughly with white spirit. I put just in a little lid a bit of white spirit, and I'm gonna dunk it in. As soon as I remove it, you can see it's taking the shape as we all familiar with. But what I want to do, I want to clean it completely so there's no residue in it, even though it looks like the brush is completely clean. I'm guessing there is some kind of preservative on it. So you know, the brushes when they in factory, they or in the shop shelf, they can be there for years sometimes, months, years, you know. So they need to put some kind of preservative on it so it doesn't go out of shape and all that. But this one looks pretty good. Once we clean it completely, I like to rinse it a couple of times and then clean it again, just to make sure there's no residue in there, no wax, you know, because they all come covered in some kind of shit. There we go. And while I'm cleaning that, I can pretty much straight away tell that this brush will need cutting. How can I tell that? Let me show you. Right on the tip, I'm not sure how well camera can pick this up, but right on the tip, if the brush is wet and smooth, like this, you can tell that the very tip of it is got like 2 or 3 hair strands sticking out a bit too far, and that will cause issues when we're going to start striping with it. You can see it's right on the very tip. There's probably like I don't know, 2 or 3 mil needs cutting down. I can tell it now, but we're going to take it for a spin and I'll show you what kind of problem that will cause when we stripe them with that kind of brush. So I'm going to load it with paint. You already know how to do this, and then we're going to take it for a spin. I always like to take my brush for a spin 2 or 3 times. As I said, I do 2 or 3 full cycles of cleaning, striping, cleaning, preserving brush, cleaning again, striping, preserving, before I put my razor blade to it. That's just how I work. Okay, let's take it for a spin, see what happens. Right, so now the brush is fully loaded. You can tell straight away it needs cutting down. If you look on the end of very tip of the brush, there's a couple of hair strands that's sticking out way too much for what they should be. And the issue that will cause, if we try to stripe with it, yeah. So the line is nearly perfect, but on the very top of it, when we start, it creates that uneven, not clean cut line on when you're striping of it, and this very tip of it is to blame for it. There's a couple of hair that are just sticking too much, you know, even single ones out there. And yes, that can be corrected, but that's not the point. You should be able to just press it down and create an even line, but that's not happening because of the tip of the brush, and that will cause more issues going around the corners. You will probably flare out too much, or trying to join the lines. I mean, at first it may look pretty neat. There have been issues already. It may look pretty neat because it can leave like really nice and sharp edge, but you don't necessarily want that in a pinstriping brush. I mean, you should be able to connect this line over here, but I'm unable to do that because there's like a single, I don't know, 2 or 3 hairs that's sticking out way too much, probably 4 mil, and there's another I don't know, a bunch of hair that's sticking out slightly too much. So when I'm getting there, it's crossing over too much for my liking. Once again, not sure if camera can pick this up, but when I'm putting the brush down, you can see the hair, it's touching the base before I want to touch the whole brush, and that's causing all sorts of issues. So I know this brush will need to be cut down. Let's clean it up and we do it again. Right, so I've done the process a couple more times just to make sure what I'm seeing is correct, and it is. The brush needs cutting down just slightly from the top. So it's completely free of paint, it's clean now. What I like to do at this stage, just dunk it in my white spirit, just gently. Don't want to have it super wet, but you don't want to have it completely dry. So I just run a little bit of tissue through it, and I shape it with my hands to more or less the shape it would be with the paint on it, which is more or less like that. There we go. And you can see, I'll get you closer. If I lay it down flat, you can see that this part over here, it's sticking out a bit. Can you see this? Okay. So the brush goes all the way in, and this part over here, you got single hair strands just sticking out a bit too much for my liking, and that is what's causing the problem. That's what's causing the issue. Maybe if I lay it down this way, it'll be easier to see, or maybe not. Trying to work over here with you guys. So yeah, this part over here, you can see this single strands, and that's what needs cutting. So I'm going to put you over here. Ideally I like two hands for it. Once again, shape it the way you want to, and I'm literally cutting like I don't know, it's probably 3 mil from the hair that's sticking out too much, right? So that's gone, but I still got this very, very sharpy point. Now if you're afraid of cutting too much at the first time, just cut a little bit. You know, it's better to cut twice and less amount than cut once and cut it too much. But I know from experience that this is not enough, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut a little bit more. So I cut all this single, as literally 2 or 3 hairs, single hairs that were sticking too much, and I still got this very sharpy point, and I want to go back probably another 1.5 mil from that point. Put your razor blade to it, and the whole thing will just come off just like that. And I'm confident that this brush is perfectly fit for purpose right now. Just to make sure, we can take it for a spin again and see what results we're gonna get. But I don't know if you can see this. This bit over here is literally what I cut. It's like 2 mil, and there was another 2 mil from the very top. The very top don't even really count. This is what you need to pay attention to. So yeah, the brush is all ready and ready to stripe. Just need to take it for a spin a few more times just to break it in and get used to it. The other thing you may see somewhere on the forums or on other pinstriping accessories and Facebook and all that stuff, you probably hear that people cut down the belly of the brush, which is this bottom part. Cut it down slightly over here, from this part, just to make it go easy around the corners, or for any other reason they do that. Well, I disagree with that. In my personal opinion, the belly of the brush holds the most paint, and if you want to go easier around the corners, then you should get a thinner brush, or you should practice more your brush control. I would not recommend cutting brush down anywhere on this part to make it thinner, apart from the top when it needs to be cut sometimes. Once again, some manufacturers will send the brush ready to use out of the package. It's already pre-cut, you don't need to cut it down. So even doubt, always take a brush for a spin, at least a couple of times. Stripe it for a day or two sometimes and see how you feel. And if you're confident you need to cut it down, go ahead and do it. Remember, cut a little by little, don't cut too much, because you can never go back when you cut too much, and then your brush is pretty much ruined. There are ways of fixing that, you can reshape it, but I would not recommend doing that when you're first starting pinstriping. If you're a professional, then you're probably not watching this video. Why would you? Alright, so once this little guy has been cleaned properly, it is ready for action. It's ready to be used as it should be. Use your preserving oil of your choice, or I use motorcycle oil as my choice. It's been working very well for me. But any oil will really do, and look after that brush, and if you look after it properly, it will serve you for years. My first brush is over 5 years old, and it's my favorite brush by far. Every now and again, it's losing the hair too, but if you look after it properly, it will serve you for a very, very long time. Once it's properly set up, like we just did, just stripe with it, take it for a spin, stripe with it for a few days, and if it needs any more fine tuning, like a bit of a tip, you're still not happy with some line consistency or the how this finishes the line, take another little bit of from the tip off. Don't go too crazy. It should be okay as it is right now, but if it's still not happy with it 100%, then go back to it, and do some fine tuning in it. But other than that, we fully set up with that brush. This was very specific because it's a sword liner, so they're a little bit different than your regular brush. And what I've got here is Wizard Vortex number 0. It's a scrolling brush, and that's more close to your any other brush really that is out there, maybe apart from specific lettering brushes that are chisel head. But this one comes in a protective sleeve over the top of it, and as you can see, it's got some kind of glue, sees some kind of protective wax on it, so it's completely different than the previous one. It's stiff, and if you try to paint with this brush right now as it is, you ain't gonna go far, I'll tell you that. So I'll show you how to set this one up, and that's gonna be probably more accurate to any other brush you receive if it's got some C's on it, some kind of glue protective wax. So join me for the ride, and let's get this one set up. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this type of brush from a factory comes with some kind of protective wax or some C, some kind of glue on it, just to keep it in place, keep all the hair strands together, and so it doesn't distort if it lays on its side or something. It's very, very tough surface. As you can see, I can probably even break it, if I try hard enough. It's how thick that is. So there are different ways of getting rid of that wax from it. The best and the easiest way, it's wash it in white spirit or other thinners of your choice, whichever you are using. And this process, it may require more than one wash, like so, depending what kind of glue or what kind of C's or wax they put on the brush. So once it's not usually enough, it's getting better, but I need to just keep soaking it until it becomes completely free of that residue that's inside. And again, rinse it off. And at that point, you may want to work your way in the brush a little bit, and you can see some kind of wax is being left on your fingers. So kind of you need to comb the brush, if you know what I mean, and you can see some kind of residue is coming off. And once this structure is broken, it's going to be easier and easier to get rid of it. It feels a little bit like candle wax, but it's not. It's probably specific wax for brush preservation. I used to use it, but there's a lot of hassle taking it off, so I step away from it. Yeah, it feels much better. The brush is smoother. You can see it's bends around the corners now, so that's a good thing. I'm gonna keep washing it, probably a few times, just to make sure it's just like I want it to. It's smooth and soft, and then I'm gonna take it for a spin, and we'll see whether it needs cutting or not. Because to be fair, some of these brushes, and I'm guessing that is the case as well with this one, you probably don't need any cutting, don't need any setup from a factory. I never cut the brush straight out of the box. You always take it for a spin and see whether it requires any cutting. These brushes are handmade in America, and the MAC brushes anyway, they are really, really good quality. So I always take it for a quick spin before I decide whether I need to put razor blade to it or my X-Acto knife or not. It's always a good practice to do it this way. Yeah, at this stage the brush is pretty much free of that residue. However, I'm guessing from my previous experience, once I load it with paint and I tried to stripe it or put some scrolls, the residue, that wax will appear somewhere from the inside, and it will mess up my lines slightly. But that is a process of loading, setting up the brush. You know, you need to spend extra few minutes on it just to make sure it's working for you. Right, I'm quite happy with it right now. Let's load it up with paint for the very first time, and we see what kind of performance we're gonna have with this boy. Right, so the brush is loaded, very first time with some green paint, and I'm gonna just try to throw a couple of scrolls over here, see what kind of performance I'm gonna get from it. I can already see there are some hair strands, they not perfectly lined up on the brush. You can see those lumps, and that's probably there was still some wax or some residue from that seized, that glue that was over the brush. But let's see if we can how it performs for us for the first time. So typical procedure of just a regular scrolling. So far so good. I'm guessing it could be a bit more flexible. Yeah, it's working okay, but I'm gonna give it another clean, and I'm gonna throw another scroll over here, see what happens. Yes, I'm cleaning the brush one more time through the paint, and this time when I'm drying it from my thinner, from Wine Spirit, I'm gently grabbing it with the paper towel, the tissue, gently, and I'm gently grabbing it, and I'm just pulling it out, and I can see some stuff like a residue from that wax is being left on the paper, which is good, which is what I wanted to. Once again, give it like a comb through, and there's still some wax left over here, and that's gonna be the process for the next few runs. There's gonna be still some wax. We need to get rid of it completely. You can see maybe those in those hair strands like a white bits. It looks actually like dandruff coming off from that brush. So we need to get rid of it completely. Otherwise, it would be interfering with the performance of that little brush. But fortunately, it's not a long process, and get rid of it with some thinners and just give it a good clean, good wipe, you know, every now and again. It really helps. But once it's clean, you know, it's clean and ready for action, and then you look after it, and obviously this stuff is not coming back. It's only the ones. So it's worth taking extra time, you know, at first to set the brush up correctly. I remember back in the day when I first started my pinstriping adventure, and I picked up the scrolling brush, and even though I thought I cleaned it really well, it wasn't performing for me at all. I was having a really hard time of scrolling with it, and that was because there was still some wax residue left in between the hair in the actual brush, and I thought I cleaned properly, but I didn't. It took probably a couple of days for me to just practicing back to the white spirit and paint, and then back to the oil and back to the paint. Probably like 3 or 4 cycles of cleaning the brush properly until I could get the full performance from that little brush. And that is exactly the case happening over here. You can still see some of this wax residue being left in those in this brush. So the best advice is really just keep striping with it, clean in between clean it properly and preserve it with oil, and then clean it again in between changing colors, and you will get rid of it in no time. And I'm pretty sure this time the little brush is ready for action again. Let's have a look. Okay, so another few cleaning cycles, and the brush is fully loaded again. See if I can get better performance than last time. Again, this is just a practice board, don't worry about the state of it. I just need to respray it black. It's just for the purpose of this exercise. It's not about scrolling, it's about the brush. So let's see if we can perform better than last time. Yeah, it feels smoother. It flows better. Definite improvement from the last time. Lines are not breaking up anymore, and even hold more paint than it did before. So that's quite a success. Let's throw a couple of teardrops over here. Yeah, that's a brilliant little brush. And that's straight from the factory. I didn't even cut it down. I don't think it needs cutting down. Actually, I think actually it does. It's either that or it's losing single hair. Yeah, it's losing hair sometimes. The other thing is, brand new brushes, it's good to give them a quick like a pull. Don't pull it too aggressively, but because they're brand new, they'll be losing hair for the first few days of their life. And to prevent, you know, losing the hair in your artwork, just pull them, you know, a couple of times, and you will see a few hairs coming out, and that's perfectly normal, nothing to be worried about. So this brush, I would be confident to stripe with it as it is from the factory. However, I will be striping it for the next few days quite intensively, and if I'm not happy with the very tip of it, I will just take my scalpel and I cut like literally 1 mil from the top, 1 millimeter from the top, which is like very thin, probably a little bit more than your fingernail width, from a very top of the brush. But only if you're confident about doing that. You know, it's okay. This brush is not super expensive. It costs probably about £15, but why ruin it? You know, so stripe with it for a few days. And if you feel like you may have a better performance with a tip cut down slightly, then only then I would do it. But right now I'm quite happy with it. I may put a razor blade to it in a few days time, but at the moment it's good. Alright guys, that's it for this little lesson. I hope that clears it up for you just a little bit, because I know some of you messaged me and you were a bit wary about cutting the brush. You don't want to cut it too much and ruin it and all that, and that's understandable. Just the rule of thumb is take it for a spin first. Take it for a spin and stripe with it, you know, even for a couple of days when it's brand new. That will ensure two things: the brush is clean of any glue, any residue, any wax, and number two, if you will give you understanding of what needs to be done with the tip of the brush. The sword liners, they probably, most of them, they need to be cut down. The tip of the brush needs to be trimmed a little bit, and even doubt, just do it bit by bit. Cut 1 mil off, you know, and then stripe with it again. Cut another mil from the top, very top of the brush, and then take it for another spin. And then if still you have some inconsistent results, trim another mil, you know, so up to 3, maybe 4 mil sometimes from the tip of the brush. Don't overdo it. You just need to. So one of those things you need to play with. As I said, these brushes are handmade and they made to a highest quality. Most of them anyway are. But not all of them needs cutting. The scroller, I'm pretty confident with it right now as it is. I'm guessing in a few days time when I'll be striping with it a bit more, few hair will probably pull out to the front, and I will take my X-Acto knife and cut like 1 mil from the top, and that will be it. The brush will be set up for life. But as I said, you know, the best thing to do is take it for a spin, play with it, and that will give you understanding what needs to be done with the brush. Don't be afraid to put razor blade to it, but think before you do so. Simple as that. Once again, guys, any questions, any suggestions or any questions, give me a shout, drop me an email. Underneath the video there are my links to my website, my Facebook, my Instagram account, so don't be afraid, drop me a shout and I'll be more than happy to help if I only can. And as you probably noticed, Mr. Giraffe finally moved out from a garage. He said to me, he sent me an email, he said to me he found the love of his life and is living happily in south of Cambridge, which we all wish him best of luck. That's about it for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Have a beer, rock hard, and I'll see you next time.